Before going to know what is the page life cycle and what are the components, what are the events associated with the page life cycle. So generally, before going to discuss with this, generally we work with lots of controls. Like, could you mute yourself? Like, if you have
Yeah,
anything, just you
yeah,
can unmute and you can talk to me.
yeah.
Okay. So generally, whenever we are working with ASP.NET, we already discussed that ASP.NET always driven with the event-driven programming model. Means every action which we are going to do with ASP.NET, which is always associated with an events. So in order to accomplish any task, events are mandatory in order to achieve a specific task or specific requirement. So for this accomplishment of any task, which always requires some events to figure out or some events to rise out in our execution flow. Okay, we cannot call explicitly an event automatically. Implicitly some events are going to be called whenever we are going to invoke a function, or whenever we are going to click a button, whenever we are going to click a check button, whatever the things that we have, anything. So internally some kind of events are going to be raised. So in order to know what are the page lifecycle events with ASP.NET, so we must know like how many phases of page lifecycle events are in place at the time of our execution process. See, we have a pre-init, which is an initialized event. So we have these are the phases of our execution model. So first phase starts with the pre-init event, and then init event, and then init complete. So on preload, and then we have a load event. So we may work with page load event regularly, and then control postback events. Means suppose if you have a checkbox, like checkbox checked changed event, that is one event. If we have a button clicked event, so likewise, what are the events? Like if we have a button, normal event also we have. That is a command. So likewise, what are the button control? Control specific events. So control specific events comes under control postback event section, and then load complete event. So here load completing will be done, and then on pre-render, on state complete, render method, unload event. These are the different kinds of events which are associated in our execution model. So we will call all these as a page life ASP.NET page lifecycle events. Let us discuss one by one what was the essence of first event and how we will transfer to next request. All the things we will get to know. Okay. See, as I told you, most of these events are inbuilt events. Internally, they are calling. No need to declare each and every event in our execution model until unless there is a specific requirement to deal externally with those events. Okay. So page load event by default, when we are creating, when we are creating a new page, automatically page load event will comes. Okay. Whenever we are going to deal with any of the control like button, checkbox, radio button, anything, automatically a specific events, if it is required, then only we will get to work with the particular event of a particular button or particular control itself, right? This is the normal process which we followed so far. Now we will see, we will explicitly we will we define and we declare an event, then we will know how a event is going to be found, what was the first step for the particular event, and how it is going to be traversed for the next event. All those things we will get to know. Okay. So generally, it is a series of process. Whenever we are going to execute our ASP.NET application, it follows some series of steps in order to achieve our desired functionality. Okay, which includes initialization part. Generally, whenever we are working with variables or whenever we are working with a new controls, first whatever we are going to do, we should initialize our data, right? The initialization is the basic step for us, and then after initialization, we are going with an instantiating the controls, means initializing with the controls. After that, we'll go with saving the state of a control and restoring the state of a control, and then our rendering process. So we already discussed about what is the rendering in earlier classes. Okay, rendering is nothing but, so it provides a final output for us. Okay, in between this we have a multiple number of events are going to be like triggered. Those things we'll get to know from this session. So first is pre-init. Okay, whenever we are going to do a program, so generally if you want to work with any variable, or if you want to work with any of the small kind of program, so just first of all what we did, so as per the program requirement, what type of variables are required, that we'll figure out. And after the figuring out of a variable, we just declare the variable and we just initialize the variable with initial value. Suppose if I declare int a comma b, so a equal to 0, b equal to 0, that is the best practice, means we are initializing our variable. Why? Because once we're done with our initialization part, so it has some memory, like some memory is associated with an integer variable. The moment you declare a variable means some amount of memory is allocated to that variable. So if you want to initialize with an initial values, so our compiler get to know that some value is associated with that variable. At the runtime of a program, you may change your value as per requirement. That is the next step. Okay, first initialization is required for each and every event. Okay, if you are not initializing, then automatically if you have a default constructor, that will initialize just by defaultly. No need an explicit initialization part. But if you do initialization part, that is a good practice. Okay, means for every program execution flow, initialization part plays vital role. Initialization part plays vital role, so that, so here our first event is nothing but pre-init, means pre-initialization. So here, what is the use of pre-init event means? So generally we have one property that is nothing but is postback. Whenever we are dealing with our page load event, here we have a is postback. This is one of the property. We'll get to know what is the is postback property. So
That one is used a lot in the coding, right?
yes,
The is
yes,
postback.
yes. This was like we can use regularly.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a property. So first of all, at the time of our first time execution process, we'll check what is the state of is postback property. Whether, so this determines whether our request is first time request or not. Okay. So generally what I'm going to do is I'm going to do one program here, if is postback. I just one console like response or write statement. So response or write is first time execution. Just I place a breakpoint here in page load event. I'm going to execute this one. So automatically when you are executing this one, first time it will leads to the page load event. Okay. So your is postback property is there. So means it is false. Means whenever we are going to, whenever we get to know whether our request is first time or not, we will make use of is postback. First time it is a false mode. Whenever you are going to hit second time, then it becomes is postback value to true. So see, now this is the first time request where we use. So when I click on this, now this is the first time request that this we have. When I click on submit, so here we have to follow some validations. So generally I'm going to pass some validation inputs here. So just I click on submit button. When I click on submit button, my request, see again it will lead to the page load. So here now is postback turns to true. Means if we do any other hit with the help of any of the control, means server receives a second time request like implicitly from our control. So at that point of time our is postback becomes to true, which indicates that this is a second time hitting to the server. Okay, so by using is postback property we'll get to know whether this is a first time request or second time request or not. What is the processing of the request count, that we'll get to know with the help of our is postback property. So check the is postback property to determine whether this is the first time the page is being processed. Okay, so this is one of the use with PreInit. And then we are going to create a dynamic controls. So dynamic controls is going to be processed at a pre-init process, and master pages we have. So we are going to discuss soon master page concept. So master pages is dynamically set at this phase, and themes, and themes is nothing but some kind of styles that also apply dynamically in this process, that is nothing but in this event, pre-init event. In pre-init event, so we should determine whether the request is first request or not with the help of is postback property, and as well as we are going to create a dynamic controls, and as well as if we have a master pages, master page will be set dynamically in pre-init phase only, and for master pages we have some kind of styles and themes. Okay, all will be applied at this life cycle, means at this point at this pre-init event. So all the style sheets which are associated with the master page will be applied dynamically. That is the use of a pre-init approach. See, let us work with I'm going to create a new application, new page. In that page we will see add new item, we'll see all the page lifecycle events. Page life cycle PGLCA, I'll give a name like this. Okay, just I want to take a design. In this I want to just place one button. So for time being I don't want much controls for this in order to understand all those things. So just I want to take a button. I would like to change the text of the button, that is submit, and I want to change ID of this button btn submit. Okay, so now I want to go with this code. So we already discussed about pre-init, right? So now I would like to portrait my pre-init event here itself. Okay, protected. So void. See, where we are running these events, all these events are by default in page. So that your always your event starts with page underscore. Okay, and pre-init. So it requires two parameter. For every event it requires two parameter. So those two parameters are this one, object sender event argc. What does it means who was the initializer of this event, means from whom we are initializing this event or from whom we are into this event. So that will tells with the help of our sender. Okay, if I click, suppose if I have a button, so what will button underscore we have a click event. When I click on button, so we'll get to know who is the sender for this event. Sender is nothing but button click is the sender for that event. Event args is a class where here it contains some properties. Okay, so whenever we are using that e dot, so we have some properties. So toString, get type, all those things. It always depends with control to control. Whenever we are dealing with a button, we have a command name, command argument, all are the properties which are associated with that. So likewise, so which is always differ with event to event. This is page lifecycle event. We don't have external property. We have only internal methods. You can identify methods like if we have this symbol. then you can identify these all are methods. Okay, if we have this symbol, something hammer kind of symbol, then you can understand this is a property. Okay, if you have this symbol like diamond color of like some kind of red color symbol, then you can get to know that is a method itself. Now see, this is a pre-init event which I used here. Just I want to place a breakpoint here, and then I want to place a breakpoint here. The moment when I execute this page, first of all my request like comes to here, and then it will comes to page load event. Okay, let us see. Usually what we think so far, we think that so far only page load event will trigger first. See, my first when the moment when I execute here, my first request comes here, and then it will comes to the page load. So far we have some like a kind of myth. Always whenever we are executing a page, first time request will hit to the like page load event, but it always hit to the pre-init event first time. So we are not using externally pre-init event. That's the reason we didn't identify. We automatically page load is event is like it is by defaultly coming when you create a page. So that is the case. We get to know that okay, first time page load event is raised. But if you want to go in depth with the page life cycle event, pre-init is the event which is the starting entry point of a page. Whenever we are running a page, it is a starting entry point. By default, it will end to this pre-init event, and then it will goes with the succeeding parts. Okay, we'll see different kinds of code with the pre-init event later. So once we'll discuss all with the different kinds of events. Once pre-init is event is done, then we have one more event. That event is called init event. Okay, init is nothing but initialization event. Okay, so in previous event, initialization part is not yet done. Like controls initialization, and as well as data initialization. Nothing is done with the help of our pre-init event. Pre-init is only the responsible for identifying whether the request is first request or not. So and it is going to set themes, styles related to like master pages, and it is responsible to create a dynamic control. This is the primary responsible with the pre-init event. And for coming to initialization event, this event fires after each control has been initialized. Suppose if you have a like 10 controls, means text box control, like buttons controls, checkbox controls, like we have different kinds of controls which are available in this page. So each and every control is going to be initialized. Where it is initialized means in init event. So once after the initialization is done internally by each and every control, then only our initialization init event will be raised. That is your first point. Okay, this event fires after each control has been initialized, and then each control's unique ID is set, and any skin settings have been applied. So for every control we are using ID, right? So each and every ID is different with another control. So and as well as you might be remember that we have one more property for each and every control for a common property. Okay, we will see what is that common property. So CSS class and as well as enable theming, right? This is one of the common properties. Suppose if you want to apply some kind of class, we can make use. If you want to apply some themes, so those themes we can make use, like that is true, and we can provide a skin ID for that. Themes will have some skin IDs that we'll discuss in later parts, like in CSS and themes, all those things. So like whatever the IDs that we give, automatically that ID will be applied dynamically for this control. So this will be applied at your initialization event, init event. Okay. So and as well as uses this event to read the initialization control properties. If you want to initialize some values, although initialization part will be done, And even suppose if you have a like variables, if you want to like initialize variables, that also we can done with this. The init event is fired first for the bottommost control in the hierarchy and then fired up in the hierarchy until it fired for the page itself. Suppose we have a 10 controls, so control 1, control 2, control 3, so on, control 10. First of all, the execution process will start with control 10 and then control 9 and then control 8. Like that it will come to the control 1 and then it will hit to the page event. Okay. Once all your controls will be initialized, then only it will comes to the page lifecycle event. Okay. So that this is the process of execution of this event. Now let us see how we will work with the page init event. This is the init event. Let us check. Now before executing page load, again it will go to the init event. So it will hit to the pre-init and then it will hit to the init and then it will hit to the load. This is the process of execution. Okay. We'll see what are the concepts which are associated, nodes or something, some important points later once we're done with this all events. Okay. So this is about init event. Now am I clear so far?
Yeah, so
Okay.
far it's clear.
Okay.
So this one, these page pre-init and all, you have to write down. It doesn't come automatically.
Yeah, it doesn't come automatically. That's what I'm telling.
Page load comes
Yeah,
automatically, right?
page load comes automatically. Until and unless
Okay.
we have a specific requirement to deal with external events, then only we are going
Okay.
to declare this one automatically. That is in calling internally.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Now let us say like what is init complete event. So now initialization process completes. So that will be deal with init complete event. So now we have one of the most important property with our page, that is nothing but view state, and as well as we may come across this property with most of the controls. So generally if you are using any of the text related controls, so here we can say enable view state. So view state mode. So suppose I'm going to take one of the button, or sorry, one of the text box here. So let us see. This is our my text box. Let us go to the properties associated with this. View state mode is by default for everything, and as well as enable view state. We'll get to know our view state is enabled or not. So far view state is not yet set. So view state will be initialized at this init complete process. We'll see what is the view state, what is the use of view state, all those things we'll see in state management technique, which is a separate concept. For time being, we'll give a basic information about view state. So until now the view state values are not yet loaded, hence we can use the event to make changes to the view state that you want to ensure are persisted after the next postback. Raised by the page object, use this object for processing tasks that requires on initializations to be postback. Whenever we are going to use a view state is nothing but it is going to capture an information, and information will be stored for all the round trips. Round trip means for all the kind of events. When you click a event, automatically that request will be hit to the server, right? The moment that request is hit to the server, control state will be becomes empty in most of the cases. Means control values are already submitted. That is the reason values becomes empty. In order to preserve the information, we can store that information in view state. View state stores some information. Okay, that information will capture in all round steps, even in button clicks or even in any of the events. uh, we are going to preserve that information. If we are in our intention is to preserve some information, then we will go with an view state event, sorry, view state property. Okay, that view state will be available with InitComplete Event, and page object is created here. So here we can understand that page is a class. Okay, this is a class. You can see I already told you now when you click on F12. So this is nothing but your class. Your class requires an object in order to invoke some process, right? If you want to work with methods related to your class, you should always create an object, right? That page object is created, raised by the page object. Your page object is created, and then use this event for processing. This event is going to be used whenever we are going to initialize, initialization part will be complete, means then only this event will be raised. So let us see like how we are going to work with this event. I'm going to just copy this one. So here init complete. Now once we complete with init, so our request is going to be hit to init complete. So just I'm going to execute this one. First pre-init, next init, next init complete, next load. Okay. So next event is nothing but preload. Before load we have one more event, that is nothing but preload. See, raised after the page load view state for itself and all controls, and after it process a postback data that is included with the request instance. Before the page instance raises this event, it loads the view state for itself and all controls, and then process any postback data including with request instance. Loads view state data are loaded to the controls. Loads postback data are now handled to the page controls. The thing is, what is the basic use of preload means? Here only initialization part will be done in earlier event. Now those properties are going to be used at OnPreLoad event. Okay, here I have a view state will be prepared here. Here I have a is postback is prepared here. That's it. Like initialization will be done here. If you want to use, if you want to assign some values or something, if you want to make use of those things, all those will be done at the level of on preload event. Okay, this event will be make at the time of on preload event, means this is an override event which we have on already. On preload event is available. We are going to override this event here itself. Let us see like how we will work with unprotected override. So void at last we'll see example also for this. So now I'm going to execute this one. See here we no service method for the phone to okay. So it doesn't contains a sender. Doesn't require a sender because it is by defaultly called by our page object. So sender is not required for this syntax. Only for this. Now first request pre-init, next init complete, next on preload, and then page load. Okay, so we can make use of all properties under on preload. And next is load event, which we deal commonly. So here we can make use of is postback, on load, is load, okay, is control set, many of the properties that we can make use here. So let us see. The page object calls the onload method on the page object and then recursively does the same for each shell control until the page and the controls are loaded. Say for example, I would like to click on submit button. Okay, this is my submit code. So first request, I'm going to execute this one. This is your first point. So at first time, each and every phase will be done. Now I'm going to click on this event. So now next, see, next phase is also each and everything. After loading of this page load, then only your submit click will be there. Means for every control event has to be raised, it always comes to the load event. The page object calls the onload method on the page object and then recursively does the same for each child control until the page and all controls are loaded. This is one of the child control. This is one of the child control. If you have checkbox, that is also any control which are available in the page, those are child controls for our page. Okay, if you want to raise any event, that automatically it follows an order. Like first is, first event is on init, sorry, pre-init, and then init, like that, like preload, load, complete, and then load, and then a specific control event. It always done recursively. Recursively means whenever we are going to work with any of the child control, always the request comes with that order, and then it will comes to that particular event. So that is our first point, and this is the first place in the page life cycle that all values are restored. If you want to restore all values are restored in this event only. And most code checks the value of each postback to avoid unnecessary resetting state. So always we'll check the resetting state with postback in this event only. We'll see this with programmatically. And you may also call validate and check the value of is valid in this method. Suppose we are dealing with a multiple number of validation controls and all those things. We'll check whether that request is valid or not with the help of is valid property and all those things in this event only. And as well as you can also create dynamic controls in this method. We can also create dynamic controls, and as well as by using on those we can set the properties of the controls and establish a database correction. If you want to create DB interactions, if you want to create an establishing layer with a database, so all the DB corrections will be set at this level of process. That is nothing but at page load event. So control sets, all this will be initialized at this part only. If you want to set the properties, all those things we will get to make use of this page load event. Okay, this is one of the entry point, that is explicit entry point. Okay, internal entry point is nothing but your first event. Okay, explicit entry is nothing but your load event. Okay, so pre-init is nothing but your explicit entry, and sorry, implicit entry, and explicit entry is your load event. Okay, this is about our load event. Then nothing but your control postback event. Means if you have a button, so next it will come to the button. If we have a text box changed, we have one more event. Then that will be your next. Say for example, here I have a text box here. I want to make use of this event. So this is my text box. First of all, I want to change ID of this text box, txt, say for example name. So here text changed is the event. I'm going to double click on this. So in order to make use of this event, so generally I have an auto postback that I want to make it to true. Any event in ASP.NET, if you want to make use of this auto postback, we have to set to true. Suppose here what I'm going to do is, okay, this plot, okay, we'll go with one by one. Now I want to text changed event. Text changed means after entering of your text box, if you leave out of from your text box, then automatically that event will be fired. So now see, it will come to text changed event. This is the process. So I entered some values, suppose PQR, I just click on tab. Tab is nothing but I'm coming out of that particular text box. So automatically my process will be, this is nothing but your control level event. So or we will call it as an control postback event. In earlier example, we dealt with button. When I click on button, automatically it will comes with first phase, first event, next event like that, and it will hit to the click event, button click event. Similarly, if you have a text box also, similarly, if you have a checkbox also, similarly, all first events will be executed, then a particular control event will be executed. Okay. ASP.NET now calls any events on the page or control caused by the postback and use this handle. I will share this document, just go through this, and if you have any doubts you can let me know. Okay, anyway we are going to handle like example related to this one. Next,
Okay.
next is load complete event. So next is load complete, means once we deal with the control event, then is nothing but load control event. Here this is end of our event handling state. Up to here our events is going to end. So here this use this by using this event, whatever the page is loaded, so whatever the controls are loaded, all the loaded controls are identified in this event. So let us see, let us go to this part. Load complete. Now this is my page. So my first request coming like this. Click on button. See, my first request coming is submit, and then see once it was done with submit event, then it will comes here. Okay, means here we will get to know what are the events are raised here or what are the controls are raised here. All those things we will get to know with the help of our load complete event. Okay, next is pre-render. So we have a render, right? Rendering is nothing but it's a process of converting server side code to browser understandable code, that is nothing but HTML code. So before rendering means once our page is rendered means we will get an output which indicates that we received an output from the browser. Okay, this is a pre-render event. Here in pre-render event, this event is also called recursive at many times. This is also override method. So here in this event, so different types like data binding controls, like we have a grid view, repeater view, list view, we have different kinds, form view, we have different controls for binding of our data. Okay, for all those things we are going to deal with on pre-render event. This event raised after the page object has created all controls that are required in order to render the page, including child controls of composite controls. The page object raises pre-render event on the page object and then recursively does the, this also done recursively, means for every control rising this event is also going to rise. The pre-render event of individual controls occurs after the pre-render event of the page, allows final changes to the page load or its controls. Suppose at the time of page load, if you are intended to do something, final phase of doing will be done at this event, and as well as this event takes place before the saving view state. View state is going to be like we have a view state. View state will have some information. Before returning this view state, we are going to manipulate that view state here only. So any changes that we can make changes on this pre-render. Once we made the changes, then automatically that view state will be returned at the page level. Okay, last minute of changes is allowed on pre-render event. For example, after this event you can't change any property of a button or change any of view state value. Okay, this is a preliminary process where we can do our task, where we can verify our task at a final step. Next, each data bound control whose data source ID property sets calls its data bind method. So data bind is a method for our data bound controls. We'll see that in later. So that also called in this event only. Use the event to make final changes to the content of the page or its controls. Okay. So say for example here, this dot page dot title. I'm going to execute this one. So before going to this, so just I'm going to execute one. So here what I'm going to do is I set my page title as welcome. All pages done. So here you can observe that what is my page title, that is nothing but welcome. Now I'm going to make use of pre-render event. Okay, this is a pre-render event. I'm going to make use of this one. On pre-render, just I want to set a breakpoint here. Step, next step, page load complete, and then pre-render complete. So this is my welcome, right? Here what I'm going to do is my first page. I'm executing this one. So now my control state, like my page title changed. Any changes that will be done here only. This is the last minute for changes. Last minute for our changes in our page life cycle is on pre-render. Once this event will be raised, means there is no chance to change our data. Okay, so and data source controls, data bound controls, all will be finalized at this point only. We will see any examples also. This is about on pre-render, means rendering means it's a process of providing an output for us. Before output, this event will be raised. Next is on save state complete. So now view state values are available for us. Once we are going to display the view state values, so then we will say that view state, save state of view state will be completed. That will be here. Raised after the view state and control state have been saved for the page and for all controls. So this is the final mockup event. So here all values are changed, means all values are saved. So here we don't have a provision to change. Before this event occurs, view state have been saved for the page and for all controls. Any changes to the page or controls at this point will be ignored. So changes will be ignored. All changes it will be handled by this pre-render event only. Use this event performs tasks that requires the view state to be saved, but that do not make any changes to the control. Here we cannot do any changes. So just final output will be displayed. So whenever we are entering to this event, which indicates that all the values are saved, means all the values are final values, where we don't have any provision to change the values. Okay, this event gives an information. This is nothing but on save state complete. Okay, so now I'm going to on save state complete. Now I'm going to execute this one. F5, 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 F5. Here we are end up with an error. I want to first. So error in the sense, here we don't want to change our information. Okay, so I'm going to change this one. Next. So then here our save state complete will be available. So this is the final output of our page. Okay, here all the saved values will be displayed to the end user, and here we don't have a provision to change our values. Next is render method. Render is nothing but this is a method of the page object and its controls. Means once this HTML page is available for us, means this is nothing but this is a done with the help of our render event. There is no specific event for this, but automatically our page will be converted to HTML. So how we will get to know means, so when you go to the view source of this page, automatically all controls are converted to HTML controls. Instead of server control, that will be converted to, so like in a HTML control. That will be done with our render method. Means the render method generates the client side HTML, dynamic hypertext markup and the scripts that are necessary to properly display control at the browser. So how we want an information at browser, all that browser information will be available with the help of our render event. And then unload event, this event is used for clean up our code. Whenever we are using a page unload event, which indicates that this is an ending point or exit point for our code. So here we have an unused memory spaces are available. So we are going to deallocate memory for unused memories, and as well as we have an multiple objects are created and objects are not yet closed. All the objects closing will be done here, because object creation is nothing but allocating some amount of memory in the memory pool. So once we done with our programming, if you are not deallocating that memory, means it is always a performance hit to the end user, right? So that deallocating instances, all those things will be done with the means cleanup of our code, that will be done at our unload event. Suppose if you are trying to do any programming, any functioning at page unload, it raises an error. It is not intended to do your programming. It is just for deallocating a memory or cleanupping of our code at our unload event. Okay, we no need to write any code. If you write our any code, means automatically that raises an error. The code which is related to free up of our memory is okay, but the code for performing of any other task is not okay at this level of event. Okay, that is nothing but a page unload event. Okay, at every page you may encounter that page unload event, which is used for disposing of our object or initializing nulls to our page. All those will be done at the level of page unload event. Page unload event. So now our part will be comes here. So now I'm going to execute this one. Okay, suppose if I write a code, response.write. So now I'm going to execute this one. It comes to here, response is not available in this context. Okay, it raises an error. Okay, why? Because this is not for handling of our execution process. Just here this is used for free up of our memory. Okay, this is all about your page lifecycle events. We'll see different kind of examples for this page lifecycle event in next session. So far, am I clear?
Yeah.
That's it for today.